Good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you are watching this, to my Crest online training peeps. Welcome to lesson 13. This one is going to be designed for 9th and or 10th graders. We'll see how far I can get. I might separate the 9th from the 10th grade, but I might keep them together since many of you teach both grade levels. We'll see how it goes. I'll try to press through the lesson as quickly as possible. Just a quick reminder, as we model and mentor the types of punctuation that we're going to be going over, we're going to be doing in the binder, we're going to be on page 543 to 552. And for 9th, we've just done numbers 2 and 3 for elementary, 7 and 9 for 5th, 6th, and 7th. So then the 8th, 9th, and 10th, these not 14, 15, 18, and 20. Why did I pick and choose? Well, I chose the 8 questions that gave the students the most trouble when the last time that the test was released, that we were allowed to see it. Now they have released the 10th grade and 9th grade, or well, they have it on the parent portal. So as soon as they release it, then I can kind of analyze for this last test, because those are the only ones that you 3rd through 8th grade teachers are going to see, kind of to begin to prepare you for what your questions are going to look like. So a reminder, we're going to do in 9th grade and 10th grade, 14, 15, 18, 20, one that says what change or correction should be made in sentence. We would underline change and label C.U.P.S, where the mistake would be capitalization, usage, punctuation, or spelling. Then the other one is going to, on number 15, it's going to say what is the correct best way to write sentence, which would be a R.O.F. And number 20, I believe it is going to say what is the correct way to write sentences plural, meaning that you're going to just look at 2 sentences and check which one is the sentence and which one is the fragment, or vice versa. If the first one is the fragment and the second one is the sentence, and that's why the yellow arrow is there, you can flip it and decide either way. And you'll use the process of elimination underneath. Are there some check for run-on fragment issues? And that's almost always the case. And you'll eliminate comma conjunction choices that are problems. Anything that has too much repetition would be the wrong answer. If it changes the content or the meaning more than the other choice, if it's the wrong cause and effect relationship, or incorrect compare and contrast relationship. So let's look at 14 through 20. If we can, I'll try to go as quickly as we can. Again, we'll be on, and I'll show it to you when we get there to make sure that we all get on the same page. Go to your binder to page 549, and this was based on 2019. That means that they've released the 2021 test, so you can kind of do the same thing. I've pretty much done little mini tests for 2021, and once 9th and 10th grade release the test, I'll go ahead and do it for 2022 as well, so we can focus just on the questions that gave your kids the most trouble. So the first thing, have some sort of structure, a checklist that your students have to follow, and mine is consistently the same to get kids used to it. We should always read all questions and any problems or passages regardless of subject, underline things that we feel are important, label, meaning mark the test booklet in a way that my teacher has prepared me and modeled and mentored for me. Upper grades, you can evaluate the type of question it's being asked, because as we saw, there's three kinds. Then execute the strategies so you can begin to eliminate 75% of the time. It's going to be still multiple choice in regular format. We'll select one in our book and one in the Scantron, where we're going to submit our final answer. So whenever the keywords say what is the correct way to write a sentence, we would bracket in the sentence. And again, for those of you who haven't heard, I like bracketing sentences for editing. That way you're not accidentally underlining and covering up periods and commas. So sentence 15, that's singular. So that's telling you that the question is, again, a run on or a fragment, or there's no mistake, but when you look down at the last letter, there's not an option that's there. So less than half of the students who got a question like this in ninth grade did well. And again, we should never just lock ourselves into just ninth grade. I think that eighth grade could handle a question like this, seventh grade, and some of even your elementary. Take your kids to a level that they can be challenged if they're more advanced, and bring them down to a lower level and work on some of the lower grade ones if they struggle. So as we see here, we're going to look for a run-on or fragment. So what we'll do first, we'll circle all of the stop signs in the problem, we'll circle all of the ending punctuation, which we call in our FAT guide the floor. This one has letter F, has 2 periods, two stop signs. Letter G only has 1 stop sign. Letter H has 1. And letter J has 1. Then I'll switch to yellow. Where's my slowing down punctuation so I can make sure I either do something different or say something different when I'm reading those questions. Semicolon, comma, semicolon over here this time. I see a period that I forgot, comma, semicolon, and comma. And the reason that it's critical that we do this kind of stuff, either make it verbal where they say these punctuation marks, or kinesthetic where we bounce the imaginary ball on the floor, disappeared, table, or up in the air, so they can concentrate on what kind of punctuation mark they're being thrown so that we can practice that. So what are we going to do now? We are going to read in both places for all of the answer choices, underline and label in both places. We'll begin to eliminate, now that we know it's either a run-on or a fragment. 3 answer choices that won't work. Select one in the test portion and select one that will submit on the online response. Okay, so we did say that I had forgotten one of the punctuation. I saw that period right here. So let me go ahead and circle that period. And I see also I forgot a comma here. So if I don't see them, I might not say them. And that's a problem because I might not think about it. Okay, so here we go. Track with your eyes your mouth, and your mouse. So here we go. I will this time draw with my pencil. Let's see what I got here. Capital. Many fans, subject, plural, have gotten frustrated with the Dallas Cowboys, comma. In spite of having incredible athletes each year, comma, they can never seem to make it to the playoffs, period. So my brain was telling me that seemed like they were supposed to have a wall here that not would be a slow down wall, but there should have been a stop wall. So there was my run on. So I've got to either fix it there or fix it somewhere else. So let's see which one does that for me. All right. So we will look at letter F here first. Capital. Many fans have gotten frustrated with the capital Dallas, capital Cowboys, semicolon. That means there's an independent clause, a complete thought, previous. That's true. In spite of having incredible athletes each year, comma, since that's an introductory phrase, it needs to be separated with a comma, not a period. But if I wouldn't have circled it, I might not have known. Because of that part right there, I can eliminate letter F. Letter G. Capital. Many fans have gotten frustrated with the Dallas Cowboys, comma, in spite of having incredible athletes each year, comma. That doesn't really flow. So I don't think that that's the answer. But whenever you're not sure, you can always put a question mark to see if there's not anything better. Let's try our letter H. Capital. Many fans have gotten frustrated with the Dallas Cowboys, period. And we're stopping the sentence. Capital. In spite of having incredible athletes each year, comma, so far so good, introductory phrase, they can never seem to make it, comma, to the playoffs. Now, I didn't circle it, and I did that intentionally because if I just say they can never seem to make it to the playoffs, that sounds good. But because that comma there is making me slow down, that doesn't really make sense to do that. So because of that one little punctuation mark, we're going to say that doesn't work. That means it's either going to have to be G, where it sounds kind of awkward, or it's going to be J, and you'll see why the students had trouble with one like this because of the way that they switched the sentence around a little bit and decided to put the semicolon and follow it with an introductory phrase and an independent clause. So they had to learn they had to know how to do three things correctly. Well, actually, for an independent clause, let's see what we're talking about here. An independent clause, which is the first portion, followed by this semicolon with an introductory phrase instead of having incredible athletes each year, separated by a comma. They can never seem to make it to the playoffs, and independent clause. So let's see how that sounds when we verbalize it out loud using our eyes, our mouth, and our mouse. Capital. Many fans have gotten frustrated with the Dallas Cowboys, semicolon. In spite of having incredible athletes each year, comma, so the semicolon would be a table bounce, athletes each year, comma, they can never seem to make it to the playoffs, period. Now, for those of you that are thinking, I don't want to do this with my students because they're high school. Jesus did visual, auditory, kinesthetic students with adult strategies with adults. He said they have eyes, but they don't see, and ears, but they don't hear. The reason that high school students struggle is because too many teachers are not willing to make things visual, verbal, auditory, kinesthetic. They're not elementary. They're wise. They're total physical response strategies that help your total classroom do better, not just some of the kids. So when you compare letter J to letter G, where you're like, oh, it sounded kind of awkward, letter J would have been the better response. So then what we'll do is say, let's go ahead and select draw, and you would either, it would be a J with a circle next to it, or the J would be the letter itself, depending on what kind of test you're using. So that would be how to do number 14. So they had to basically know independent clauses, introductory phrases, separated with a comma, and another independent clause. But the problem that some kids had, if they've never practiced working with semicolons, they didn't know how to slow an independent clause down and follow it with another dependent clause or introductory phrase followed by a second independent clause. So that's the modeling that I would recommend for number 14. And then your other one that I promised for ninth grade, a little more than half the students got one like this correct. So let's find out what the problem was. Quickly in your notes on the test or in your paper that you set aside, have some sort of structure in place, a checklist that you go over. One thing you can think about is if you think of taking a test like a meal, the reading is the appetizer, the meat and the vegetables are the U, the L, and the E, the underlining, label, and executing and eliminating, and the dessert is the S, the selecting of your answer. So once more, while we're reading in both places, we'll underline in both places and label in both places. So let's go ahead and do that so that we can see what kind of question that we have here. What change should be made in sentence? Again, a bracket so that we're not underlining periods or commas. Sentence 16 singular. So what we have there is a R.O.F. It's a run-on or a fragment that we're looking for. And again, you see on D, there's not a make no change. So there is a problem with run-ons or fragments. So let's begin to evaluate, start to eliminate. First thing to do is let's go ahead and read. I'm sorry, I did something wrong right there. I caught myself whenever it says change, we write cups, okay? Because that's the first step next to the gold cup on your folder. When it says change, and I'm glad I caught myself, or you would have checked, emailed me or messaged me and said, hey, I thought you said when it says change, you write cups. That is true. So it's a mistake of capitalization, usage, punctuation, or spelling. And again, because we're practicing punctuation, the actual mistake will be something to do with punctuation, although we'll get to practice sometimes a couple of other things. All right, so here we go. Following along, capital. As the sports writer Dan Cook, name of a person, once announced, comma, capital. So I can already see that there is a quotation mark because the five cause, when the tag is first, the name of the person who's speaking and the tag has to be followed by a comma, quotation, capital. So I need quotation marks right there. So they should have slowed down and put some quotation marks right there. Capital, the opera ain't, and I know there's a saying, don't say ain't, your mother will faint and your father will fall in a bucket of paint or something like that. But whenever we're having people talking, sometimes their slang or their unusual way of saying things is allowed. It's like giving them a license to speak incorrectly because that's their voice, the way that they talk. Capital, the opera ain't, and I think it would be, is not over until the fat lady sings. Okay, that's an idiom because there's not really a fat lady that's going to be singing anything. So what are we doing here? We are putting the other, we're slowing down to say, hey, we're done talking now, but we're also going to say the sentence is finished. All right. So what we're looking for is the one that has the quotation mark to start the dialogue statement. So let's practice the other strategies anyway. So letter A says change sports. Look at my fingers. That's plural to sports, plural, possessive. So if you're going to do that, you're going to remind your kids, draw an imaginary or a wall to check and see, can I own the next word? And since I'm a sports writer, I write more than one sport. I don't own the word writer, so I'm going to eliminate that letter choice. Letter B, that would be P for punctuation. If you want to label what kind of C.U.P.S mistake it is, that would be a good idea. Letter B says to delete the comma after announce. Okay, well, since we're getting ready to talk, they're saying to get rid of this. I'm gonna put that in red because we don't want to do that because we need the comma table, quotation when I start talking capital. You don't want to eliminate something that's part of a punctuation rule. Insert quotation marks where after announced. So that's what they're saying. And because that would be a slowing down punctuation, let's see if that's what we said. Comma, quotation. So that is a punctuation error. And it is the one that we were looking for. So we will say yes. That is the punctuation mistake that I was looking for. So I would probably select that. Let's check the other one. Delete the quotation marks up there in the air after sings. Well, since we started talking on the and we stopped talking after sings, we need our opening and closing dimples. So it wouldn't make sense to delete that. So I would say no, it has to be part. If you think of the opening quotation marks as play record, the closing quotation marks would be like the stop button. So yes, we have eliminated 3 answers. We've eliminated letters A, B, and D. We've selected one in the book. So now we are going to select it in the Scantron, either the D, making sure I was going to be able to choose the color and the thing that I wanted to do. I'm going to fill in that D right there with my little circle and cool thing. If you're using paper, you can have your kids fill in the letter and then sometimes have them write with their, and if I'm working on paper, like this is just a paper strategy, circle, make a tiny circle around the letter, fill it in, and then what I can do is say the 15D that I chose in the book has to, on the paper one test that you practice, has to match the 15D that I chose in the Scantron. So I feel like that's enough. I'm going to go ahead and separate the 10th grade. What you're going to notice on the 10th grade is it's got question number 3 where it says, and I'll show it to you real quick. It says, rule number 3, it'll be the first one that you'll see. So I suggest that maybe all of you, even if you don't teach 10th grade, take a look at this one. Number 20 is going to be a what is the correct way to write sentences blank and blank. So which will mean the first one is the sentence, the second one is the fragment, or the first one is the fragment and the second one is the sentence. So that will be the 10th grade version. And I just wanted to keep the videos in manageable sizes for you guys so that you wouldn't get too drained. Go ahead and try some of the other questions on your own time. Like I said, I did model and mentor the ones that I felt would be the most difficult and give you kind of some suggested strategies. And I'll give you your challenge when I put it in the email. Look through the email towards the bottom, and I'll give you a challenge for these punctuation questions. So take care, and hopefully you're enjoying lesson 13 of part 1. We'll be getting into usage after this, subject verb agreement. And the reason I saved that for last is because in usage, you sometimes have to read not just 1 or 2 sentences like rules number 2 and 3. We have to read an entire paragraph where we do what I call the Michael Jackson moonwalk and check the previous sentence for singular versus plural or past, present, or future on the predicate, simple or compound subjects and predicates. So tune in for the 4th video for 10th grade where we can practice the skill of punctuation, and I'll model the 2 most difficult questions for you like I did for 4th elementary, 7th for the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade teachers, 9th for the 8th and 9th grade teachers. Take care and God bless.